चलो राजेश शुरू करो.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very interesting panel to discuss something rather intriguing that happened in Australia over the course of this month. Only yesterday, Cricket Australia confirmed after its investigation that the Indian players indeed underwent racist abuse. And this is something we've been claiming right from the start. We backed it up with evidence, we backed it up with witnesses. I have a very interesting panel with me, but before I introduce my panel, Irfan Pathan has something to say to all of you. Take a look.
क्या आप भी किसी अपने सपने मेरे तुम्हारे टीम 11 पे टीम बना रहे हो और बच्चों के साथ खेल रहे हो? हमारे साथ खेलोगे? हाउस पे खेलो लेजेंड्स के साथ. हमें हराओ और जीतो डबल कैश. Log on to houseit.com and win real cash.
Right then, this is what has happened over the last few weeks, right? We all told you on Sports Today what Mohammad Siraj underwent at the Sydney Cricket Ground, the names that he was called. So
Hey Rajesh, we can't hear you. Yeah.
Am I audible, everybody?
Yeah. You're back now.
So what I was saying, Boria, was that we backed it up with evidence, right? Everything that happened at the Sydney Cricket Ground on days 3 and 5. I have with me Boria Majumdar, Deep Das Gupta, and Krishna Kumar, who brought a lot of this to light. Who also he also had his own experiences. But before I go to both KK and Deep Boria, it's a very interesting way the news got covered in Australia yesterday. The real matter was Cricket Australia confirmed what we've been saying from day one, that racist abuse did indeed take place. But a part of the report from Cricket Australia also said that the 5 or the 6 men evicted from the ground that day were not guilty prima facie. Now, the way Australian media portrayed that was, these guys are innocent. But the fact of the matter is that this abuse still took place, and it is a serious implication of whatever transpired in Sydney. So, firstly, our report stands vindicated, Boria.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Indian cricket team was vilified and abused is proven. Secondly, KK's investigation is undergoing, and he was the one who brought it to light on Sports Today, and thereafter that story has been picked up by news media worldwide, including CNN and Wisden and every other news media in Australia, including the platforms which initially denied racist claims. So the fact that the story has been proved right is beyond doubt. And that is now 100% sacrosanct. Having said that, yes, if the 6 guys are innocent, we don't care. We want racism to stop. Now it is upon Cricket Australia to furnish evidence as to who is guilty. If they've admitted to racism, somebody is guilty. Who is that somebody? We don't want this to be swept under the carpet. Whether those 6 are, whether the 60 are, we don't care. We need the guilty to be punished. Now it is contingent upon them without delay to furnish that evidence to NSW police, to everybody concerned. Let the world know who these guilty people are and take action. Because just by saying Indians were racially abused, yet those people are not guilty, doesn't solve anything. Frankly, whoever the perpetrator is still roaming around unpunished. In the case of KK, that is the case. In the case of Siraj, that is the case. So in both cases, we want the perpetrators of this horrendous crime punished. What that punishment is can be debated, but firstly, the guilty will have to be punished. We are as clear as that, and we've just gone one step. We've seen admission of guilt in one case. In KK's case, we will need an update, but clearly from what we know, investigations are on. We need an update in that case as well, Rajesh.
Absolutely. So, KK, if I get straight to you, it's true. It's right. And there has been an instance proven in this case of Mohammad Siraj and a couple of the other Indian players. Cricket Australia also extended its apology to the Indian board and the Indian team. But in your case, the investigation is still undergoing. But how would you like to take us through everything that you've encountered in Sydney and the follow-ups? How would you like to take us through this? What's your update on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have been, first of all, the whole thing has been very emotionally draining, to say the least. It's been overwhelming and to a certain extent mentally fatiguing. But the support that I've had from family, friends, ex-bosses, professors around across the world has been phenomenal. And one thing that I, always tell my boys is purpose, passion, and power. Those are the three things that you need to basically follow. And I'm just leading by example and walking the talk, like any dad should do. But as you would notice, I've tackled both the days differently. Day three, when all the racial abuse and other forms of abuse were also going on, and it was, I mean, it reached a stage where we couldn't take it anymore. We tried all the resource of trying to basically calm them down. So between lunch and tea is, when I went and offered one of the guys as a truce, a beer. And what he did was even larger. After 10, 15 minutes, he bought 2 beers, and we basically sat together and cheered for the rest of the day. So I think, and these are young guys between 19 and 21 years old. So they have a lot to learn, and there's a lot of ignorance that is coming out of here. I know there's been a lot of reports about waving the flag. Maybe, I just want to make one point very clear. As a cricket supporter or as a sports supporter, I'm very clear on the etiquettes that comes involved with the game. So the time that I wave the flag is only during key moments, or it's actually when there's a wicket or between breaks, between overs. But with respect to my case, and this is one point that I wanted to stress or underline. It's been almost, my formal complaint went in on the 12th, and by the time they were taken, it would be 13th. So till date, I haven't got even a casual, cordial call from the SCG Trust to say, hey, we hear you. It seems it's coming from a place of hurt. There's an investigation going on. Till then, till the investigation is over, this is an informal apology. I think that's my right to get that. Cricket Australia apologized to BCCI, and the leadership team of Australia apologized to the Indian players. So my question is, why are we having double standards when it comes to racism, especially racism? Because I'm the only other person who's actually filed a complaint. Having said that, I've addressed it to another board. I don't want to mention the boards and all that. And I did get an informal apology from them, but not from the SCG Trust. So I'm hoping my case or the findings of the case is basically going to come out in the next couple of days, either today or on Monday. But the way the day 5 events happened, when it is a young guy who is ignorant of the group, and then you go on day 5. One thing I didn't say in the last show, and thanks for having me here again. I like the sound of it. Last show, one thing I didn't mention was the 3 things that I went actually for day 5. I didn't have tickets for day 4. The 3 things I actually went for day 5. One was support India. 2 was basically support Mohammad Siraj, especially because I heard things were told to him on day 3, and then I heard words like, brown dog and monkey and all actually coming out. And I was repeatedly asked this in the press as to, did you hear these words? I didn't. So I'm being very truthful in terms of what I've heard and what I've seen. And the third thing why I went to, cheer for on day 5 was to say thanks to my parents for the upbringing. I grew up in Nigeria. I've traveled around the world. I wore the Nigerian flag proudly and went to South Africa World Cup to cheer for the Super Eagles. That shows that, sports is the winner here. And we need to make those lines very clear. The last one point that I just wanted to add was, I think when you approach a certain body that is doing an investigation, you're asking some basic questions like, is the accuser who is in question here is under suspension? I think that's my right to know. And when you get a cold shoulder from as response, that's not on, and that's why I had to take it up a bit more.
Right. Deep, you heard both Boria and KK talk about this. The 2 points to this crux here, right? One is why the double standards. Apology has been issued to the Indian cricket team and the Indian players. Great, that's good from Cricket Australia. But what about the acknowledgement of KK's complaints there? 1. 2, what would you like Cricket Australia to do going forward from here? Because this is clearly haunted a lot of cricket fans around the world. And KK, went back to the game on day 5 to show his support for Siraj and the rest of the players. Good on him. But what would you want Cricket Australia to do from here? There are some more concrete steps that are needed for sure.
Absolutely. To start off with, again, KK, congratulations, and I'm really, really happy that you've taken it and following it up. It's not just taking it up, but also following it up after so many days and weeks or whatever. So, well done. I really must congratulate you on that. Secondly, I mean, good on Cricket Australia to have accepted it. I think the first step is to accept that something like this has happened. So, good on them that they've accepted that this has happened. But that does not stop. It shouldn't stop there. I think step two is to figure out the perpetrators who actually did it, because somebody did it, right? And they have videos all over the ground. You have CCTVs. I'm sure you have witnesses like KK himself is there. I'm sure KK will give his version of the story to the authorities as well, and he's already done it. Then thirdly is to punish. I think, as Boria mentioned, I mean, listen, just accepting that something like that has happened does not, I mean, it does not stop there. And you shouldn't be brushing it under the carpet, because end of the day, we are all fighting for the same cause, and we all have to stand up for it. And we've mentioned this before here at Sports Today as well. So for me, I think the natural conclusion to this whole thing is step two, finding out the perpetrators, who they were, even if it takes time, so be it. And then thirdly is obviously a punishment.
Right. Boria, but I'm not trying to drive home this point too hard, but it is a fact that we on Sports Today did also, point out the discrepancies in the Australian report throughout, right? When there were factors against the very story, against witnesses, against players. You were the first journalist who broke the story of what happened and what transpired. Going forward, though, it is, and we also discussed that this is not just a problem with the Australian cricket, with the Australian series. It is a global problem. We've seen that across a lot of sports. For fans like KK, and there are definitely two sides to the story, right? Of players being abused, of teams being abused. But what about fans? Because you go to watch any international game, and then there are these statements and mottos, right, for fans and for players alike. How does this work out? Because what KK did was great, right? Getting up a beer, these guys coming into exchange. He doesn't want to talk too much about this young guy whose identity he wants to protect because he's young. He made a mistake, and he, in his own way, has sort of gone and shown solidarity. How are things going to change among fans? Do you see that changing, Boria, anytime soon?
See, this is a very, very important question you've asked. There are two things here. One, KK and the rest of the fans are far more vulnerable than the cricket team, because the cricket team has a degree of power. Ajinkya Rahane can go up to the umpire and say, oh, you know what? We will walk out if you don't stop this. And the umpires will then instruct the security personnel, and the security personnel are under compulsion to take action. So there is a chain of command there, and they have agency. In KK's case, or there are thousands of others who do not have that agency. Suppose KK did not have the money. Suppose he was not old enough. Suppose he did not have the maturity to buy a couple of beers and get that boy to come around. What would have happened? He would have continued. Now, KK might have had a brawl. He might have been beaten up. There might have been an incident there. So while this, people are calling it the beer investigation or whatever it is, but the fact of the matter is, in this case, KK has been a bit of an exception in that he tried to dilute the issue and douse the fire. And to a degree, he was successful. But has that addressed his violation? Has that addressed his vilification by the security personnel at the SCG, the body frisker at the SCG, the supreme commander who instructed that he cannot take his banners in at the SCG, the multiple levels at which he was abused by the SCG trust? Has any of that been addressed? No. Has there been closure? No. Is he under trauma? Yes. Will that trauma be addressed at any point in time? No. By saying that there was racism, but those guys were not the perpetrators, what has Cricket Australia done? Cricket Australia has admitted guilt without bringing closure. Now, we want closure. We want action on this matter. Because unless there is action and the guilty are punished, there will be many more KKs in future. Now, after the KK show, I was thinking back to myself. I have watched cricket in Australia from 2000, like 99, 2000, 2003, 2004, 2007, 8, 2011, 12, 2013, 14, 2018, 19. Each time I have been abused of racism. Each time. I did not have the guts to stand up. I remember in Perth, and by the way, Gideon Haigh is proof. Now, if I remind Gideon, and he's one of the strongest voices of Australian cricket, I can now say this, and I have had a woman with me in Harini Rana, who at that point in time used to work for Times now works for IMG. Harini Rana and I were working for Times Now at that point in time. We were standing in front of our apartment, which was a stone's throw from the cricket ground, and at that point in time, it was the Wacker. And Gideon Haig was actually doing certain shows for us. There were boys who were having an alcohol party in just the apartment opposite. They continuously kept abusing us racially. Two people came down, literally snatched the microphone once, kept abusing Harini, stripped behind Harini because she and I were standing there. And this is all 2011-12 in Perth because the Indians were getting rogered. Now, when I think back to the fact that none of us were able to protect Harini. The fact that Harini and I were traumatized not to be able to speak up because we thought we will be physically violated and beaten up. Gideon was at a loss and tried to protest, but only could to a degree. So there is a history to all this. KK has now brought that history to light. What is the way forward from here? Unless there is closure, there will be many more KKs and there will be many more incidents like the one I've told you, where no action would be taken.
No, this is horrific what you recounted, Boria. Yes, KK, please go on.
Yeah, Raj, I think just to add to what Boria said, I'm not expert here, but from my observation and going with respect to what the case is going, and as a fan of the sport, I went through it's part of my job, right? We depend a lot on research. So I went through a lot in terms of going through the dossiers and the policy and procedures of Cricket Australia to see what are the policies of anti-racism against fans. So you have 47 pages against the players and the support staff, but there's hardly anything on how do they tackle racism against a fan. So that is one point that I basically want to address. Two is, yes, at the end of the day, if the accuser, the whole report here in Australia is saying that there is no substantial evidence on the accuser. In my case, I'm clearly pointing out who the accusers are. Even the beer story, on day 3, it's all over there. The camera can see me going and buying these guys a beer, and then everyone behind are all clapping. And I've told them it's between lunch and tea. So it's all there. The cameras are there. Even on day 5, it's all there. The cameras. They even have the rover that keeps going around. And I was told that the rover's got very high technology in terms of audio and visual compatibility. So that's something that we also need to look at. And 3, most importantly, is yes, if we do get closure, the accuser gets punished in this case, and I've clearly addressed what is my requirement. I can't go into details in terms of what I did ask, but one important thing here is, again, while I was doing some research on this, the actual practice here is the security guards act on reporting. So if a fan reports that there is racism, then they will act. I think at the end of the day, if we can change this to act on observation, and that is what I'm setting, I've already got that ball rolling legally as well in terms of setting this up. Because a security guy should be, look, they always came and checked if my mask was on. So they are doing a good job if they've been asked to do that. So the question is, does the SCG Trust actually train the security to act on observation? Now, if this is any other abuse, like sexual abuse or sexual harassment, and if it's happening anywhere in a societal surrounding, I'm sure it'll be addressed. It doesn't need to be reported. So, and the other thing is, if there is a person who's having an investigation, like an abuse in my case, he should be suspended immediately. Why are we having 2 standards on that? So I thought I wanted to share my 2 points worth here because right now it needs to change from act on reporting to act on observation. And I really hope ICC takes this up. And it's not only in SCG. Across the world, if ICC is saying that they have a zero tolerance policy to racism, then let's see that implemented in the policies and procedures. Let's see that implemented in the stadiums where the games is being played. so that there'll be lesser victims like me. And even if this happens again, I hope there is more power to the whole system. So it's a systemic
True.
failure if you really look at it.
Yes, absolutely. Look, these are very important. Yes.
Rajesh, before you go to Deep, Deep has already got his hand up. One quick 30-seconder. This is not limited to Australia. In my case, I remember when Pakistan won the 2009-10 9 T20 in England, and my reporter and I, we were reporting from outside the Lord's cricket ground, the Grace Gate, and there was a Pakistani procession that was going around St. John's Wood in celebration, and a group of local supporters, they basically came towards us and said, what is this Paki doing? That same term, snatched our microphone, the microphone with which we broadcast, and ran away. At that point in time, we were so shocked. All we did was laugh, and I remember it vividly. I screamed at my cameraman saying, and he said, sir, ye aapne lene diya, abhi office ko kya jawab denge? And we laughed at the whole thing, that because we were so taken aback that, oh, what are we supposed to do here? That the group just snatched our microphone in front of the Grace Gate, one of the most poshest areas of London, Swiss Cottage, St. George's Wood, and ran away. And we weren't able to do anything. And the name of the cameraman also, for the sake of a thing I will say, it was Shailendra Bhatt, who was working with me at that point in time. He was so taken aback that abhi hua kya? We couldn't do a thing. So this is not the first time in any case.
Shocking. Deep, before I have a question for you, please go ahead. You wanted to make a point. Yeah.
No, my point is, as Boria mentioned and KK as well, that this is not about Cricket Australia. Please understand, this is not going after Cricket Australia. I think this is a great opportunity for Cricket Australia to set the record straight, one, and also kind of create an example going forward. Because at this point we're talking about Cricket Australia because it happened in Australia. But this is a systematic thing. It's not about Australia. It's not about Cricket Australia. It happens everywhere. Like Boria mentioned, it happened in England. And I'm sure it happens in India as well. There would be people like that. But my point is there's an opportunity here for the cricketing world to kind of step up to the plate and say, listen, we're going to use this opportunity to create an example, make an example of people who did this, and that could be used as a benchmark, so to say, or a template for future.
Absolutely. And this is actually right. We're not targeting Australia per se. We're not targeting Cricket Australia, but there are a couple of things that I would also like to add to this, that whatever media is covering, don't try and twist the story. This is not about patriotism. This is not about backing your team. This is about backing the right and, fighting against the wrong. And that's exactly what we've done at sports today. But Deep, I had this question for you. Boria and KK mentioned two very important aspects about players being abused and fans being abused. But tell me something, KK has expressed his opinion about fans and how he was heckled, and how he sort of, in his own way, tried to soothe the situation. But what does a cricketer go through, Deep? Have you ever experienced that? And what is the mentality of the cricketer then? Coming back to the same, when you were young Siraj, he'd want to go back to the SCG and make a mark again. But does that leave a negative, bad taste in the mouth for a cricketer?
It definitely does leave a bad taste. Would you kind of take it to your heart? It depends on an individual. For someone like me, when I've heard something like that, I've just let it go. Thinking that, people who are saying stuff like that does not know much. They're uneducated people, and there's lack of awareness, as KK mentioned. So at times, some people will let it go, and some people didn't. And I'm glad someone like Siraj didn't let it go. That was his first Test match, first time in Australia, and I'm so glad that he had the courage to stand up and bring it to the notice of your authorities. So yes, you do leave with a bad taste. You do have, and like Boria mentioned, and that becomes a coping mechanism over a period of time. Like Boria mentioned, after a couple of times, you're like, what? Kyun pange mein padna? Let it go. Why do you want this? Why do you want that? And you try and brush it under the carpet. But I'm glad that's the reason I'm saying, because people like Siraj and KK have brought it up, two different aspects. One, cricketer, one spectator. I think that's a great opportunity for the cricketing world to do something about it now.
Absolutely. And Boria, I know
Rajesh,
there are
hello. Rajesh, there are two comments. There is this fellow Andrew Singh. Indian media is twisting Australian media. What a joke. You are a joke. Why don't you just leave and get out? Just don't waste our time and anyone else's. you're an absolute idiot out here. Just get out. We are addressing a very serious issue. Let's address this serious issue. This man has been racially vilified and profiled, and he's launched an investigation and showed immense courage. Cricket Australia has shown courage in admitting it. The Indian media was the first, and Sports Today was the first to report it. If you find this funny, just get lost. And the number two one, which I want to address, is people have said that, you've heard at the Firozshah Kotla. Frankly, yes, you have. We've heard it at the Eden Gardens. I hear it every Sunday if I go to the Kolkata Maidan, an African American footballer being called Kalu. That is why Deep said what he said. This is not restricted to Australia. It's not restricted to England. It is everywhere. And it is important that we collectively make a point against racism and stop it. It is important that you and I stand up to it. It is important that there are more KKs in this world and not us. When we were abused in 2011-12, I mentioned it. We were scared. We ran away. We did not make a point. When Deep was abused, Deep did not take it to the authorities. So frankly, there is an opportunity in front of us to cleanse the system. No one's saying that India is not part of it. No one's claiming that Australia is alone. None of us have ever said that. So yes, this is a virus that now has been brought to light yet again, and this is an opportunity to get a vaccine, and that's what we are trying to do here in Sports Today. Yes, Rajesh.
Extremely true. Extremely true. We have 2 minutes before Boria goes on 5 at 5 with all his latest updates. But I'll just give you the last word, KK. I'll give you a minute. Tell us, before you make your point, but also briefly tell us how will you react next when you go to a stadium, and how is this whole camaraderie worked out? And surely it's going to make a difference someday at some point in time at some venue.
No, I have to say, when I went for the ODI and T20, I went with my son for the T20. It's all peaceful. The other observation is, if you're sitting on the balcony, you may not have that much of a problem. It's usually on the lower tiers. That's something I wanted to address. But I would think twice if I take my sons who are mad about cricket. But one thing I just want to say as a parting note, and especially to the Sports Today team, thank you for this platform, because it's so important for the world to know what's going on. And Boryada, you mentioned that to me on the call even before I got on air first time, saying that we're going to be with you, and the Sports Today team providing me this opportunity to talk about that, and thank you for keeping your word that you haven't forgotten. And my parting word is the game actually over? Have we actually won yet? We still have a long way to go.
No, there's a long way to go. I agree with Boria. We still haven't won. There's a long way to go. But thank you so much, KK. Thank you so much for your fight. And rightly said, Sports Today will be there with you because we fight for the right things. We bring to you only facts and figures. Yes.
Rajarshi, Sports Today is not with him. He is Sports Today. Right. Sports Today is every fan. This platform is not Boria's or Deep's or Rajarshi's paternal property. It is not. It is not a property of the India Today group that to do what they want. Sorry, this is a property that belongs to, yes, we have set it up thanks to the India Today group. But this property belongs to every sports fan. That's why we are who we are. We are here to serve sport. Every KK matters. Every voice matters. I'm grateful to Deep Dasgupta. Why? Because today Deep actually, in fact, I know for a fact he reached home just to be in time for this show. He's leaving for Chennai to be on the commentary panel for the England series. Yet he took time out to ensure he's part of the show. Why? Because he's committed to this. The whole idea behind Sports Today is to empower the fan who for the longest time has been neglected as part of this framework, in order to give the fan the agency. That is our mission. So there is no question of thanking anyone. But the battle is not over. There is a long way to go. And we need to reach some kind of a closure is all I will say.
Absolutely. Well said, Boria. Well said. You couldn't have articulated it any better. But thank you, KK. Thank you, Deep Dasgupta, for joining us on the show. Deep, I know you've really made time for the show. Thank you, KK, for joining us all the way from Australia. We leave this platform to Boria now for that much awaited 5 and 5 with all his latest breaking news and updates. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Deep.
Thank you.
Okay, so here we are at 5 at 5 today at Sports Today. On Sports Today, rather. The first news point yet again on Sourav Ganguly. Now, I had an opportunity to meet Sourav Ganguly today morning at the Apollo Hospital. I had gone there for a personal visit because my wife had to undergo certain tests. So I took the opportunity of trying and seeing if I could go and meet Sourav Ganguly. I did. He looked good to me. He was stable. He was fine. Obviously, the doctors are attending him to two of the country's leading doctors will be attending him today, and then they will be taking a call on the angioplasty and whether he will be needing the 2 further stents. Chances are he will, and whether that will happen this evening or tomorrow. But from what I saw of Saurav Ganguly, he looked good to me. He looked stable to me. We had a 15-minute conversation literally. Obviously, his wife was there. Two of his very close friends, Joydeep Mukherjee and Sanjay Das, they were there. The senior management at Apollo, Rana Das Gupta, Dulal Chakravarti, and they were there. So we had a good conversation. He's being well taken care of. He looked good to me, Saurav Ganguly. He looked very, very, how do I put it, in good hands, great hands, and contented with the treatment that he's being meted out. So we are all very, very hopeful that Saurav is getting the best medical care in the best medical fraternity, with the best medical fraternity looking after him. And he should be, in terms of alarm, there's no alarm. I asked practically everybody there, is there any cause of alarm? So anyone who is a Saurav Ganguly fan should know this. There is zero cause for alarm. He looked good to me, and I asked him multiple times, Saurav bhalo acho, Saurav bhalo acho, are you well, are you well? And each time the answer was yes. So it is a matter of time before we have Saurav Ganguly back home, back in his full throttle, full work mode. So that is my first news point. I was absolutely delighted. In seeing him. Obviously, did not waste too much of his time because he's got other things. Uh, uh, but be hopeful, be very, very positive about Saurav Ganguly coming back very shortly. Number two, the Australian Cricket Board has now admitted to racism, but they have said those 6 perpetrators were not the ones who were guilty. So what does that mean? That means that there are certain perpetrators who are around there in Sydney at this point in time who are guilty. Will we ever know? So the question is being asked on Sports Today. Just now, we finished a show with Krishna Kumar or KKY, because Krishna Kumar has now sort of taken it to a bit of a logical conclusion with the SCG Trust. The matter is under investigation. There will be some form of closure. Will he get justice? Will Krishna Kumar and his people, people who have been racially profiled and vilified, will they get justice? Until and unless they do, it is important that we utilize this platform in raising the voice, give him the platform and ask the questions. Again, I keep saying this. Maybe we will not win this one. We don't care if we win or lose. There's much more to life than win or lose. It is our job to raise the voice. It is our job to give every fan the platform. It is our job to try and make our sport a more coveted sphere than what it already is. And Sports Today is committed to making sport a better sphere. If that means we stand up for a KK, we stand up for anyone else who faces any kind of racial or other abuse, racial, sexual, anything, we will raise our voice. And that's what we've done. Actions, whether we will get results, that is not in our hands. We are not the law enforcement agency of the Sydney Cricket Ground. We are not the law enforcement agency of New South Wales, that we will have collective action here. That is not our problem. Our problem is there was an issue, we have brought it to light, and we have done that to the best of our ability. Okay. News point number 3. What a test match it is. Fawad Alam's 100, according to me, is one of the best hundreds that we have seen in recent times. This man had been banished from international cricket for close to 12 years. Now, clearly proving that in sport, you never say never. If you do that, you will, one day be proven to be a fool. So for God's sake, if somebody gets dropped, and the best example in this case is Prithvi Shaw, a lot of people, including us, have written Prithvi Shaw off, he's been dropped. So what if he's been dropped? He will go back to the domestic cricket board, domestic cricket, get himself ready and come back. Look at Mayank Agarwal. Years of hard work is now paying off in terms of Mayank Agarwal. So anyone who might have gotten dropped doesn't really matter. If he or she works hard, it will yet again open up for that particular person. Fawad Alam is proof. South Africa started well, very well. Dean Elgar, Aidan Markram, good decent partnership, and then 1 wicket falls to Yasir Shah. Thereafter was a good partnership again. So a cracking test match continuing in Pakistan, between Pakistan and South Africa. News point number 4. India did not have a very good outing once again in the Badminton World Championship. PV Sindhu losing her second consecutive match, and this time in straight games to Ratchanok Intanon. Yet again, pretty disappointing from Sindhu. You know, her form has been extremely off color for the last few months. She went to England to train. Clearly, her form hasn't improved yet. Timing is running out for our world champion. We would want Sindhu to come back to India, which I'm told is happening around the 1st, 2nd of February. And we would want PV Sindhu to unite with Pulela Gopichand. And my request to her father, PV Ramna, for God's sake, sir, you and Gopichand need to work together. We know, I'm not going to say here more. We know there are differences between the two of you. We know there are problems. But for God's sake, PV Sindhu and India need you, need Gopi to come together for the sake of Indian badminton for the Olympics. So, Mr. Ramna, if you are hearing this broadcast, please, folded hands, every Indian Indian sports follower, badminton follower, Olympic follower, requesting you and Gopi to work together with Sindhu, because she continues to be our best prospect in singles at the Tokyo Olympic Games. Whatever differences you and Gopi might have, you are mature individuals, settle it. But do not let that young woman suffer. Do not let the country suffer, because she and Satwik and Chirag, these are our best bets for Tokyo 2020 and 2021. We have seen what has happened in the last few months. We would need a Sindhu to work as closely as possible with a Pulela Gopichand. And Gopi, for God's sake, we've seen what you've done with a Saina in 2012. We've seen what you've done with a Sindhu in 2016. I know you are working very closely with Satwik and Chirag for the last 2 months. You've said that to me personally on many occasions. Please do whatever you can, because Sindhu is a rare, rare talent, and we cannot just lose her, for reasons that are external factors. We have to get this sorted as soon as possible. And the last news item, going back to our story build-ups, yesterday a couple of my journalist friends said they're enjoying the stories. So let me give you one more. Today, the 1936 tour, that was India's second tour of England. Yes, a Vijay Merchant, Mushtaq Ali 100, I'll come to that the next day. But Vijayanagram, Maharaj Kumar of Vijayanagram was the skipper. And do you know what he carried? He carried with him 200 suitcases. 200, yes, you're not listening wrong. 200 suitcases. And there were a couple of orderlies who would sleep on the door of his room, so that people did not go into his room and steal stuff from the 200 suitcases, some of which were given as gifts. And we all know what happened, because Lala Amarnath was forced to come back to India, because he obviously was considered to be C.K. Naidu's man and against the Maharaj Kumar of Vijayanagram. So Vizzy and Britton Jones, the manager, they sent Lala Amarnath back to India. And after he came back, I mean, there was chances he would go back under the patronage of the Maharaja of Bhopal, who was the board president. His luggage and kit bag was put into the boat. It was, I think, INS Southampton, which was going back to England. But Lala Amarnath eventually got news that he wasn't required. So he was punished. He was actually punished by Vizzy and Britton Jones for being close to C.K. Naidu, and it was deemed to be a disciplinary action. All that is rubbish. So clearly, India missed out on the services of Lala Amarnath, who was the best performer on tour. So there are many such incidents in the history of Indian cricket and India-England, which I will keep telling you about in the next few days as we build to that massive India-England series that's coming up. And last but not the least, subscribe to Sports Today. Subscribe to Sports Today and ring the notification bell and the icon, because this is your platform. And I've said this 100 times and I'm repeating myself. There are about 11 interviews of the victorious Indian team. 11. Show me one platform that has done that. The 11 interviews are out there for you to see, you to consume, you to enjoy. Please do that. Give us feedback, but support us. That's our humble request. On that note, thank you very much for watching 5 at 5.